What's up, y'all? You're now listening to the What Now podcast. I'm Dr. Spencer Dupre, owner of Empower Chiropractic.
And I am Dr. Zach Thompson, owner of Within Chiropractic. The purpose of this podcast is to document and share the experiences of two young business owners as we open our own brick and mortar chiropractic practices. Join along as we discuss all of our wins, our losses, insights, and the many, many lessons we learned.
As a disclaimer, none of this is ever intended to be medical, legal, or financial advice. Yo, what is up, everybody? Welcome back to another episode of the What Now podcast. I'm Spencer here with Zach, and we have an awesome guest today. Zach, let the people know who they're going to hear some fire from today.
Yeah. So today we are joined by the one and only Dr. Elise Rigney, practicing out of Fort Collins, Colorado. Elise went to Northwestern, class of November 2011, and she opened her practice, Impact Chiropractic, in Fort Collins, Colorado in March 2012, as well as a second location in Loveland, Colorado in 2021. She and her team have 6 chiropractors as well as 5 CAs. She's been in practice, if you're doing the math, for about 12 years, with her burning desire to be her passion project / legacy to open a chiropractic school in Colorado. She currently has 3 CAs in chiropractic school, which is hats off for that. That's amazing. And she knows we'd have so many more patients and local students heading to chiropractic school if they could stay in Colorado. Who would want to leave Colorado is her question. So super blessed to be joined by Dr. Elise and really dive into all that she has to share with us today. Thanks for joining us.
Yeah, thanks for having me. I feel like I need to do your guys' like yo or however you started off. Yeah, I thought you were gonna like DJ an event right away. I was like, this is good. This will get pumped up when you get in the car on your way to work in the morning.
That's what we try to do.
Something natural. That hasn't been planned either.
I like it.
So Dr. Elise, why don't you, I think today we kind of really want to get our listeners, because since most of them are business owners and practice owners, into what does it look like and what you do with Chiro Intensive. So can you like kind of intro Chiro Intensive and let some people know who don't know what Chiro Intensive is, what it is that you do with that?
Absolutely. So Chiro Intensive, I started in 2020, and it's a 90-day business mentorship and mastermind. So it's really focused on business. A lot of chiropractic groups do a super good job at like different specialties, or here's your day 1, here's your day 2, here's how you care plan, here's how you interpret scans, all of that. So the question I always got asked in my DMs was around like business. How do you have associates? How do you keep associates? Like all of our docs, if they're not staying, we're helping them go off and open up their own offices, and like just questions around that I kept getting. And so I was like, okay, I am going to start a program, but it's just going to be 90 days because I don't want it to be a program you have to like pay for every single month for the rest of your life. And so I started Chiro Intensive. So it's in 4th quarter. I love it because 4th quarter is when you like start to get like a little more lukewarm and like chill out, and you're like, oh, it's the holidays. You know, you eat poor, your business might go down a little bit during that time too. And so it's like great accountability to have Chiro Intensive during that time, because we do. So it's really for docs who are looking to grow and scale. It is a high dollar investment, I'll say. So sometimes we'll get on calls and we'll be like, okay, let's get you to this point in practice. And then Chiro Intensive is great timing, because again, there's just so many other great programs or coaches I can refer people to who might just want to get up a little bit more in like collections or patient visits, or just prepared for hiring on an associate. Cause that's kind of when people are coming into Chiro Intensive, is like, if they think they're going to bring an associate on in the next year, or they already have associates, they have multiple docs, they want to open multiple practices, they're kind of at that level. So it's all about growing and scaling. We're going into a lot of like systems of the business, and then contracts, like all that fun stuff with associate training checklists. Like oftentimes docs will hire associates, and I'm sure you guys have friends who have been hired into practices in the past who it's like, handshake, you're cool, let's bring you in. And they like don't interview them. They maybe aren't really clear on expectations for that doc. And that's why I think sometimes you can hear like the chiros eat their young. So like for me, that's like not on my watch, you know, like I think all chiropractors, like I actually just hate the term associate too. I think it's in our professions been like this tiered level of like, you're the owner and then I'm just an associate. And so like,
Right.
I've been trying to kind of get rid of that term too. And we always say like our team of doctors. And so anyways, I've created an office that doesn't need me. None of the offices need me, quite frankly. I was just in Europe for a month with my family, and I've been able to start Chiro Intensive and do some angel investing. And so that's what we get into at the end of Chiro Intensive too, is like real estate investing, which I'm very much into. And then more of the wealth building, student loan payoffs. I was able to pay off my student loans. And also I think what's a little bit different about me is I've been like solo income earner. So I have an amazing husband, but he's like he went to culinary school. And so he's an amazing chef. He's like an
Eating good.
dad. I know I gained so much weight when we got married. But so it's like a different role reversal that people aren't always used to. But I think what's interesting is I connect with people who are just in this position, man or woman or whoever, but like if they're in the position that I'm in, where it's like everything is on you, and then you add on more doctors into your office and everything's on, like all of their livelihoods are on you too at the end of the day. So yeah, it's just, I've really taken ownership in being like a business owner and entrepreneur.
That's awesome. That's huge. And especially now studying more and more, I feel like Spencer and I both are drawn to more and more business books. You start to realize that a lot of the things we've been taught are just from a chiropractic lens and not from a business lens. I'm only like 20 pages into traction, like all about
EOS systems.
Yeah. EOS. Yep. And I want to say SEO. I'm fixated on Google right now, I guess, but EOS systems. and I'm just like, wow, this is what a business is how a business is ran. And so definitely very, very interested. But how did you, we can just dive right into it, but how do you go about, keeping 6 team docs through Impact, and how do you really, I don't want to say manage, because I feel like you probably don't manage them, but really make sure that they're trained well, they're taken care of, and things like that?
Yeah, that's a good question. So I would say a lot of it came down to like systems and structure. So working through traction or EOS systems and then integrating that or implementing that into the office is important. So I, from the very beginning, when I brought in my first doc, we eventually moved her into a senior associate role. And then her and I became partners on the second office. And soon she buys me out. So it's hers 100%, which is cool for her. But so anyways, it kind of started with like creating some of those systems of leadership. So traction and EOS, they go through level 10 meetings. So I just took a level 10 meeting structure and I created that into a leadership team on my team. So having a senior associate doctor, starting from the very beginning, she was an intern from Palmer. So I was able to train her, create systems around that, have videos, have scripts, have everything like really systematized. And then we just really practiced what we preach, right? In every single way. And then when we brought on more doctors, she was able to train them all. And so then when she was leaving to go open up the other Impact, we had her train and work with our next senior associate doctor. And so it's just been nice to be able to have, like, we can learn from each other too. All of our docs go through ICPA or CACCP, which I found out there's only like 988 CACCPs and 4 of us are CACCP. So that's kind of cool.
That is really cool.
But so we do doctor training. We're just really structured, I'd say, from a day-to-day like time blocking schedule. If we have doctors trainings every single Wednesday for an hour to an hour and a half, depending on the Wednesday, we have marketing meetings once a month that are structured and have an agenda. We have the team trainings, the CA training separate from us. So everyone's really structured. And even though our docs have all been here, like I think the least amount is 3.5 years now. Yeah. So even though we've all been together,
that's unheard of. That's unheard
8 years to 3.5 years is like we've all been together. We still, like Wednesday, we still do doctor's training. Yep. So sometimes it's like, let's go through some cases together. Let's look at our patient cases, and they do doctors meetings too. So that's something with having multiple doctors in a practice too, that I had to develop like some structure around, because our patients will see everyone. They know who's going to be on the floor at what time. So when you get in a multi-doc office, like you guys can imagine, when you get associates in, your OG patients are going to be like, no, I only see him,
Yeah.
So you kind of have to train your patients. You've got to get a system around training your patients, and then a system around training these docs, so you don't just throw them in, because I always say you get one chance with patients. Like, and we've learned that even from when Dr. Laura started with me back in 2015. There's still people who wouldn't see her like 7 years later because of that one intern. Well, she didn't adjust as an intern, but like first year adjustment. And she's like, come on, I promise I'm good.
Yeah. That's
So
funny.
yeah, structure, I think, is everything. And then following through with it. I'm not a structured person of like, here's the script. You guys all have to say the same exact thing. Like, we all have our own personalities. We have personalities too. We're not just like, let's talk about subluxation and not talk to our patients about them at all, So I think allowing like that flow within all the doctors is super important, so they can each be their authentic self, but having structure in the way that we care for patients, knowing that if a patient asks us a question, we're all going to give really similar answers, do a similar adjustment modification or whatever, because we've got like our technique and touch and everything down.
That's super cool.
Yeah.
What are some differentiating qualities that you see between like associates and like business owner, entrepreneur, like quote, like owner practitioners? Like, since you see both and you're hiring both, like, where do you feel like that delineation is between like, yes, I'm a practice owner, and yes, I'm an associate?
That's a great question. I don't know if it's like character values or any traits I'd say like that you'd find on a strength finder or something like that. However, there is this test called the PDP. Have you guys heard of it?
Nope.
It's, at least when I've done it, I've had to pay like over $200 a test. So it's quite expensive to do. So they do offer it in Chiro matchmakers if you like are using Chiro matchmakers for hiring an associate. But this PDP will tell you like who's a builder, I guess. I've just ran it on some of us when we've gone to different conferences, so I haven't ran it on everyone, but I really think it can change, because I look at Dr. Laura, who's now my business partner in Loveland and was senior associate doctor and came in as an intern. Like, she will tell you guys, she was like happy, being an associate. She was like, that's what I thought I'd do. And then I had the opportunity to purchase a different practice, not even the one we opened together. And she kind of got like the itch, because I started talking to some of the other doctors, because I knew she told me she had a great salary, and she was, having babies and kind of in a really, not comfortable place in life, but balanced, I would say, like, got her weekends to herself and didn't have the stress of being a business owner. Right. But still got to like give, love, and serve. And so then I start looking at this clinic and show it to all of them, but I'm kind of offering it to others, not her. And she was like, well, what the hell? Like, I can do this. I train all of our doctors. I can do this. And she became a business owner, and she just does things like, it's nice to do it together, and that's why like I'm partnering on 8 to 10 more impacts in the next 18 months. And so, yes, I'm super pumped. And
wow.
Yep. So it's been fun going through like partnerships, because it's kind of like dating, where you're like, okay, we're like signing. I co-sign on everything,
Yeah.
And like the reason some people can get loans who aren't able to get business loans is because of my financials, right? So it's like in some ways, partnering on a business is, you can't just divorce. The way out is not easy. I'll just say that. But the buyout is easy on the way that I structure it. So yeah, I don't know if I answered your question about like
No, I think you have.
Because I think anyone can become a business owner. I don't think it's hard. I think you just have to like be consistent and follow through and hold yourself accountable. And if you're like looking for a little more freedom in your life in the beginning, being an associate in some ways, but not in every office. Some offices suck. Like suck. Yeah. That's what I think. There's just no generalizations on this, because some associates in these offices are working a lot more than my friends who have opened offices have had to work as the owner. So it just depends where you're at. Like, some jobs are cush and some really suck the life out of you.
Yeah. And I mean, just a subtle shout out. I've been following Chiro matchmakers now for a little bit, and at least from what I've heard from Stephen Franson and that whole crew, it seems like a really great way to find the right associateship for someone that's leaning more that route.
Yes, they do their due diligence really well. And if you That's who my Zoom call was with earlier, Alan and Steve.
Okay, nice.
It's funny when I was like, I was on Zoom earlier, but they do a really good job at doing their due diligence on like the matching. Obviously it's matchmakers, but also I think the lowest starting is in the 80,000s usually for an associate. So I feel like they make sure the docs they're working with are paying a good salary. I shouldn't state that in general, but for sure it's like pretty fair than what you can
from what I've
get out
generally
there.
seen over the last 4 or 5 months, that sounds about right.
Yeah. Yep.
So like, in like all the talk of hiring an associate, like when you're in startup mode, like where do you feel like, when do you start like coaching docs to be like, hey, it's time for you to start looking for an associate? Like, I feel like Zach and I are both like, hey, in the next year, we're probably gonna need some help.
Yeah. I think there's different ways to look at it. So you can look at your volume. You can look at, it depends how your practice is structured, right? If you have like, more open adjusting, like mine was like, cluster booking, right?
Mm-hmm.
You can fit so many more patients in that time. There's more like ease and flexibility with that. And so, I had to start looking at like physicality for me. I was like, okay, how much more can I do I'm side posturing patients, like full adjustments.
Oh, yeah.
If I had a technique that was maybe more like an instrument technique, I could probably see a lot higher volume. I could see a lot. That's not probably, I could see a lot higher volume, right? So there's one way of first starting to make sure you're looking and putting yourself first. And your physical health and mental and emotional health is part of that too, right? So look at that. If you're someone who has a practice that's like, my patient appointments are 10 minutes, so I can see 6 a minute or 6 an hour, excuse me, then you can figure out what your capacity is there, right? And then you can really do projections and figure out what like your revenue capacity is there too, and then have like the attrition and figure out retention with all of that. So I like to look at numbers always with every business decision, right? And so you can look at those, but also like I grew up in chiropractic where you saw 1,000 patients a week. Like that's what I worked at, an office that saw 2,800 patient visits a week before I went and opened. So it was like, and that was like full physical adjustments again. In Texas, that's where I was, down in Houston. So I like got to see this like high level of capacity, but also like learned, I had an old weightlifting injury, disc gone. I was like, there's a certain point where I knew I kind of had my physical max, especially with getting pregnant, having babies, like that changes your entire physicality of how you can adjust at certain times when you have relaxing going in your body too. And so there's lots of factors is what I'm trying to say. And then, so you could look at your volume, and let's say you're at a certain volume, you're like, I think I could do double this. And then I'm probably like spent, or I could do this, I could see this many patients a day, and then I'm like spent. But then I would say, look at your revenue, look at your profitability, and start to plan, okay, if I want to bring an associate in my area, an associate is, I'm just going to use the 80 grand, like that may not be feasible. Please, no one listening to this think that's what you should be getting paid, or that's what you should pay someone else. I'm just using that number because it was the Chiro Matchmakers number, but let's say it's 80 grand in your area, right? My best piece of advice is make sure you have at least half of that annual salary saved. So you have 40 grand sitting aside in an escrow account before you even begin the interview process. Well, if you're in like Podunk, South Dakota, you might need to begin the interview process like 2 years ahead of time, but you guys are fine. You guys have like the cream of the crop in your area, right? So you're going to be fine with interviewing in that whole process, but making sure that you have that saved, because the first 6 months to 12 months of bringing in an associate doctor, especially if you're bringing in a student, you might lose money. You might lose money that whole time. So you want to make sure like you have that nest egg ready for worst case scenario. I've actually never seen that happen with anyone. I'll just say that, but I always like, I am like a prepared businesswoman. And so I will always say, save at least half of that and have that prepared. And there's other structures too. You can set up more of an IC structure. You can, if you're worried about having that cash on hand, you can come up with some other more flexible structures. I don't know if those will always be structures that you can retain those doctors with and have them with you where they're like getting a good salary and bought in, their life is able to stay there because they're making enough to live really well.
Yeah. Super good. And a question along that same topic, what are some reasons not to hire an associate? Like, if this is why I want to hire an associate, what would you recommend for someone, like if that's their thought, do not hire an associate?
Well, are you saying like ever? Like maybe
No,
just a boutique practice and like that kind of, or would you say like you're not in a place to hire an associate? And here's why.
Both.
both. Yeah.
Okay. So I would say the first one, some people shouldn't have associates if they have big egos, first of all, because that associate's always going to be just an associate, or like, I always say, like, get your name off the practice. Sorry, I'm not sure the name of your guys' practices, but if I had like Rigney Family Chiropractic, that's not very welcoming for another doctor, right?
Mm-hmm.
Or if I built my name up so much that like patients are calling saying, I want to see Dr. Elise, that's always going to make them secondary. You know what I mean? It's like, it's just starting off right away and not a welcoming, inclusive place for other doctors to come. And then if your ego, like, let's say you started a technique. Okay. I'm just going to say, like, we know plenty of people who have started techniques. And if you're not good at teaching that technique, but you want to practice it and you want to see the person, the people get the results because of you and the way that you practice that technique, you should probably just have a boutique practice, because everyone's going to fall short in your mind. And we do see that too. And I think if you just want to have like a nice, like I say this up in like Vail in Colorado, like if you just want to have like a nice, I'd call it a retirement practice, but hey, maybe you have flexibility in your income. Maybe you have other sources of income, that sort of stuff, but you want to be like, hey, it just snowed, let's get out and ski. Having a practice that's like 2-day, 3-day a week and not having more people to manage that you might have to go cover so that you can maintain that lifestyle, then probably shouldn't have an associate either. But from a business standpoint, numbers are going to be everything. Numbers are going to speak as to if this is a smart decision or not. Like if you are, I don't want to say barely making ends meet, but if you're not already taking in what is your ideal salary, don't bring in an associate yet. Like get yourself to your ideal salary and then more. Like I would go on top of that, like 25,000 more or whatever. Cost of living is different everywhere, but I'd get over the hump, because that way, if for some reason you had to cut into your salary, like you're like, oh, well, I actually just want to make this. All right. Originally I want to make this. So it's okay. I've got a little cushion in this. It's hard not using numbers, but numbers, like, people attach feelings to numbers, right? So if I used a number, people are going to be like, I don't make that, I suck. So I just don't want to say numbers out loud, but yeah.
Nice. Super good. Super good.
So, what are some, like, whenever we say numbers, like, what are some of like the major like KPIs that you're looking for? Like, what are like some of the big numbers that people need to be looking at in their office, like to know if they're ready for some scale or not?
Okay. So usually with KPIs, so key performance indicators, or some people will say key personal indicators too. So anyone listening who might not know what that is, you can find out more about that in Traction too. But KPIs are more like those metrics, right, that we measure in our practices. But then also in my practice, every individual team member has their own KPIs too. So there's KPIs when you're hiring on an associate that you'll want your associate to track. The main one I like in my practice, because we're a family-based cash practice plans, is conversions for my associates. So if they're doing day 1, day 2, which we actually do a full condensed 1 day now in this office, which is fabulous. But they still convert them to a care plan. So their conversions, they'll take how many patients they presented care plans to that month, and then how many signed up for care, and then they'll have a conversion amount. We always want to keep that. We'll have like a benchmark, and then we'll have different tiers of what they want to hit to have those bonuses come in under their KPIs. So having those individual ones for your associates is important. But before, if you're looking at the KPIs of your practice, like I think you were asking about, to know if associate, if you're ready for an associate, that's interesting, because I do think you need to look, I can't think of like a specific KPI because everyone's practice is so different that I'd be like, this practice is ready for an associate. I will say generalized again, because everyone's practice is different. If you're upper cervical, this is probably not going to be relevant at the same numbers I'm going to use, but, or yeah, a lot of different models. But what some of my friends and I have talked about who have multiple doctors is coming up with like that number of how many patients per doctor makes sense. So what I hear is like anywhere from 250 patient visits to 350 patient visits a week per doctor. So when you hit 200, 250, this is general information. No one get mad at me. But when you hit 250, or when you hit 200, start searching for a chiropractor, because you want to go through a professional hiring process. when you bring on a chiropractor. So you want to plan that all out. And then a training period. So what I do with when docs come in, they have 90 days of more of like that probationary period, we'll call it. And they get through a 90-day checklist of training and then a 6-month training period after that. So they're not actually fully signed on and contracted on until 9 months. And they have to hit KPIs before they're fully welcomed on or signing. So backtracking that, you could go off of numbers like KPIs like that if you have like a volume metric that makes sense. So some docs too, when they hire on CAs, they'll say like, I want 1 CA per doctor. So when you add on your guys' next doctor, you'd have 2 doctors, make sure you have 2 CAs. Sometimes, if you want to bring on more of like a part-time or full-time marketing CA, you might do 2.5 CAs to 2 doctors, but kind of having that like balance is really good. I think you saw mine was 6 to 5, but I don't see patients. So it's really 5 to 5, it's not,
Right. Yeah.
I don't take up much of their time. Hopefully not, but yeah.
Yeah. And I think, no,
I don't know.
No, that's great. I have
definitely your revenue, like revenue is everything. I will always say that. And then like the profitability of your revenue, like it's
right.
That's super important. You could be making a crap ton and spending it all. And like, that's not going to help you with adding on team members and being, and there's not.
Do you have in regards to profitability, do you have a certain, a certain margin that you like to see in practices?
Yeah. Yep, definitely. It's like we'll look at margins for payroll. So that's one to look at within chiropractic. Usually the standard is to try to keep your payroll between under 30% for sure. But 20 to 25%. And then there's different marketing. You'll hear like generalized 8 to 12% goes to marketing. I think that's mixed. I don't need to spend that much on marketing. But once you build up the reputation of your practice and you have referrals and stuff, like I would say use leeway with all of that, but you could look at that payroll and be like, oh, I'm actually only at like 13%, but then I'd question you, like, look at what you're paying yourself and all of that too, just to make sure. And then you got to think tax strategy, which are you guys doing tax strategies yet? Maybe we should talk about that because you need to start that right away.
Yes.
Let's dive into it.
Okay. What are you doing for tax strategies?
Well, we currently are searching for a CPA. That's the hardest thing to find is a CPA that will take us on.
Yeah. I found a CPA and I'm interviewing him. I'm going to interview him, but I don't have the questions to interview him. So
yeah, I have 3 interviews coming up in the next 4 weeks. So we will see.
You guys been doing your own books then this whole time?
No, I have a bookkeeper that does my own books.
Bookkeeper.
Yeah, also have a bookkeeper.
Okay, cool. So your accountant will not likely help you with tax strategy. So I'll tell you that right now. It's just kind of, this is the comparison I like to use. It's like if you were an insurance chiropractor, let's say you see PI cases, personal injury cases or whatever. No, let's go with like normal insurance, commercial insurance. If a patient came in, we know like, okay, we billed them for low back pain. Insurance is going to cover 6 visits or something like that. I haven't done insurance, so I could be
something whack like that.
This is my understanding, right? Well, okay, sorry, you got cut off. But you know how you just fell the other day and your shoulder's bothering you? If you tell me about that, I can bill, we can get you 6 more visits. Like there's ways to kind of like, we have this information, but it would be fraudulent for us to like try to coerce them, even if it is true stuff. It's the same thing. Accountants, they can't be like, if you categorize this under team outing versus marketing, you'd actually get a higher deduction for that. Like they're just not, or if you use this vehicle for this, it could, or if you use your home to have your team over for
Augusta rule,
Super Bowl party, Augusta rule. Yes. Like that's, they're not necessary. If you find someone who does that, great, but it's challenging to find that. Yeah.
Okay. Yeah. I know I've been mentored by Dr. Paulo Fili, and he's big on tax strategy. And going to his seminars, it's like a fire hydrant of different ways to expense and everything. But he's dropped a lot of, I guess, Easter eggs into my basket. Now I'm like, okay, how do I start deploying these into our practice and things like that?
Yeah, that'll be good with when you're interviewing accountants too, to ask some of those questions and just kind of get a feeling. Like my accountant, who I've had for years, has always been really conservative. So like I have to I know I'm very clean in everything, but I still try my best to like do whatever I can. And then we have Chiro Pro Accounting, which I'm sure you guys have heard of them.
Yeah, that's what Matt uses.
Yep, on the other business too. And they are great. They are phenomenal at that. They just usually are at capacity for clients and stuff. So it's harder to get in with them, but they definitely do tax strategy for you.
Yeah, so I guess a tax strategy I'm curious of is like, as a business owner, paying yourself a salary, but then keeping yourself on the lower end salary wise. That way you're in a lower tax bracket, and then taking out those owner withdrawals. And is that something you'd be willing to talk about, or things like that, just for our listeners?
Yeah, okay. I do not want to sound conceited, but the level I'm at in income, right? There's no way I'm getting under a tax bracket anymore. So I haven't thought about all this stuff in a little while. So I don't mean to sound whatever, but I'm also being honest. Like,
not totally fair.
You guys are going to be there where like you don't qualify for Roth IRAs. Like you will be in this place where you're like, I don't remember all the strategies I did in the beginning, and I don't know if it still lines up with tax law. I can try to talk about it, but I don't want to give bad advice either on some of it. So when you guys salary yourself, are you an LLC filing as an S corp?
No, I'm not.
What are you?
I'm just an LLC.
Okay. Have you looked at that?
Yeah. And everybody's like, I'm getting like 50-50. Like, yes, you should do S corp. No, you shouldn't do S corp. Yes, you shouldn't do S corp. No, you. And then I'm like, what do I do? And they're like, ask your accountant. And
I know.
I'm like, hey, accountant, what should I do? And they're like, well, we are not taking new clients, or we don't know anything about chiropractic. So,
or they're like, ask an attorney. That's what they say next. And you're like,
yeah.
okay.
And that's what they say. And then I'd say, then you hit the
Mm-hmm.
attorney and you say, hey, attorney, what should I do S corp wise? And they're like, ask your accountant. And then you're like,
or they're like, hey, pay this retainer. And you're like, oh, dang. Okay.
I know. Everything's like a triangle. And then you get a financial advisor involved. And dear Lord, they're like, I can't tell you to do this or not do this, but
if I were you, I would maybe think about this. So ask your accountant, and then you keep going around the merry-go-round. And you're like, bro, like somebody just give me the straight answer. And
I totally feel you with that. Yep. So I've always, on all of my Chiro brick and mortar practices, I've always done LLC filing as an S corp. And so definitely what I did even from the beginning is, once I got myself W-2'd, right, I would put all of that money. I wouldn't even see any of it go into my direct deposit in my personal bank account. I prepaid all my taxes that way. So then what I lived on was draws. And so draws then are taxed at, what is it, 16%?
Yeah.
Something like that. Yeah. So then I'd live on draws, right? And then figure out what I could expense that was ethical to expense through the business too, as I was building to, or I still do that, of course. And then I don't know about staying under a tax bracket, because your adjusted gross income, I don't know, that's still going to show up with your draws too, isn't it?
Yeah, maybe we don't know, because maybe don't draw like that. So
yeah, because that, for me, I didn't like getting stuck with tax bills, so I always prepaid taxes in, and then I try to take advantage of like accelerated depreciation at the end of the year too. So like your first year, there's so much you can accelerate that depreciation.
Here's a question for you: where do people like us go to learn about things like that? Because like that, I mean, like we can talk to you about it, but we won't really grasp it until we're face to face with it, right? So like, where do we go to like prepare for tax strategy besides like talk to your accountant?
Good question. So I have done it, I will say, like pieces from a bunch of different people, right? So who I like a lot is Garrett Gunderson, and he runs Wealth Factory, and he's got a cool PDF. I feel like he puts out a free PDF each year that has like the Augusta rule on it, has section 179, has a lot of real estate stuff on there that's really helpful. I haven't paid for his services, so, and I'm sure they're phenomenal, but I feel like I've always gotten really good free advice off of Wealth Factory's website or Instagram ads that come at me. And then, geez Louise, let me think about that. If I find more, you can put them in your show notes.
Yeah, definitely can.
I feel like it's a lot of like talking to other chiropractors. I'm big into EO, which is Entrepreneurs Organization. And that's been super helpful, because that's all business owners in there. And so like, even like the R&D tax credit, Now that's big in chiropractic because you'll see them at different events, but it wasn't always as well. Maybe it hasn't been around forever. Maybe that's why it wasn't as well known. But like my EO, there's like guys in there with like software companies and stuff who are doing that. So I just have I hear it just like you guys are doing, and then I write it down, and then I'm like, let's go figure. And then I would send it to my accountant. Can I do this?
Yeah.
Why can't I do this? I should be able to do this. My friend did it. That's what I do.
Yeah. So we need to get an accountant. That's pretty much it.
Yeah.
We're locked into one. That's what I figured
out.
too. That's been like that's like my red flag task to do. It's like top priority every day.
Yeah. Yep. And then I'd say like having like quarterly meetings at least with your accountant is really helpful. Yeah.
Okay.
Cool.
Awesome.
Yeah, thanks. Well, if you're listening, learn about your tax strategy to where you're not like us and are like, I don't know what to do. What now? But that's what this podcast is about. But anyway.
And Dr. Paul, if you're listening, I apologize that I suck at learning your tax stuff, but I will learn it one day.
So to kind of
shout out. There you go.
Yeah. Shout out, Paul. So to like kind of bring it back to like the business growth part, where do you feel like a lot of chiropractors kind of get stuck in their scaling? Or like, what do you feel like is like usually like the biggest limit, like in, multi-million-dollar practice versus just like several $100,000?
Yeah. Well, they always say like what got you to 6 figures won't get you to multiple 6 figures. What got you to, $500,000 won't get you to $1 million. And it is truly like, I think what I see holding chiropractors back from scaling is trusting other people. And so even if you think about when you get your first CA, right? Like you might be kind of micromanaging, like checking the text messages, making sure they responded well, like kind of doing things. You're like, okay, they got that. Or, oh shit, they didn't do that. Oh, sorry. Oh, they didn't do that. Should I just do it? Or should I go talk to them and like walk them through this? And I don't want to micromanage them, but I also see they didn't do this. Like it's that, like, it's literally how you start with your first CA. Now you've got someone you're trusting to like adjust your patients, right? And your people. And you're like, oh, but they don't know that this patient needs this type of an adjustment. And, it's like kind of getting like everything from you and all of your knowledge and thinking of it as mentoring other people, because otherwise it will always be on you. And then you're just going to complain and be like, I'm so tired. I'm drained at the end of the day and I'm stuck. Or maybe you are growing. Like that's when I first scaled. I was like, shit, I am like growing. I did not expect this fast a growth. And now I hurt and my body hurts and like I'm, and then I got pregnant and it was, like I need help. And so it was kind of forced me into it. And then once I got injured, that forced me into it more of like, I can't even like reach for an arthro stim without like my disc just putting me on the floor. So I was like, I have to trust people. So I was forced into it. But if you're not forced into it, I'd say that's what hurts people. That's what stops people from scaling. And then finances. Like when you see how much you're like, okay, I got to this level of revenue and you're like, oh, I can do that by myself. Okay, now let's get to the next level. And you're like, well, I still can do this by myself. And like, look how much more I could take home. This way I could start paying off my student loans. It's like you think more like minute instead of thinking so expanded of like, if I can continue to grow and expand and scale, what seems like a lot right now that I can do by myself, I can actually 10x plus that with more people. But it's taking the time, like where a lot of chiropractors get stuck is they get so big. We'll just say busy. Okay. We'll say busy for themselves where they have to be seeing the patients and they have to be doing the day ones and they do, like they're just in it, like where you guys are right now, but then think of being at max capacity. And then they finally hire someone on and they have no time and energy to train that doctor. I mean, I don't blame them. They're like going nonstop anyways, and they just can't pour into them appropriately. So it's kind of like, you got to find that sweet spot before you get to burn out yourself, where then you burn out that associate doctor, or you just make them miserable. And they're like, I don't want to do this. You don't look like you're having any fun, So I'm sure you guys have seen that, right?
Oh yeah.
We hear about it all the time. It's
yeah. And I think that's definitely, I mean, one thing, I don't know if you saw me laugh. But there have been still moments. I've had my CA now for 8 months. It's August. And there are still times where I'm adjusting someone. We're a very open setting and I'll hear him on the phone and I'll like catch myself supposed to be present with the person on the table. Yeah. And I like hear him say something. And I'm like, oh, I would have said that a little bit different. I'm like, oh, I just got to let that go,
Like cringe.
And,
Yeah.
and it definitely has an effect in the office where it becomes very walking on, like just walk,
Eggshell.
yeah, on eggshells. Yeah.
Yeah.
And it's just like, okay, I gotta let go of this and one, pour more into him, in training. And then also just be like, okay, he's got a different way of talking on the phone than I do.
Yep. Yep. I literally think about how many, like, I think of everything, not everything. I think of a lot in sports analogies, right? And it's like, you think of how much training goes into like the fundamentals over and over and over and over, and like training season. And it's like, we don't always bring that into our practice. Even if we think we do, we can fall short of that. Or once, like my docs are very seasoned, like all the docs, we don't have a newbie doc at all anymore. And so it's like, we could easily be like, we know what we're doing. We've been doing this together for years, and it's like, no, we are going to stay on top of our game. And that's what got us here, is because we're constantly like investing in our own growth and personal and professional development.
Yeah. That's like what you hear with like Tom Brady and Peyton Manning, like,
yeah,
come training camp in their 15th season, they were still the first ones there, last ones out, and that kind of thing.
Totally.
Even though they've done it, won many Super Bowls, that kind of thing. Yeah.
Cool. Oh my gosh. Yep. So many good points, Brian. You go ahead.
To kind of bring that thought full circle, would you say that it's this like more of the same, or are you constantly having to like add new things in, like to grow to these like larger levels? Like, are we, we do the same systems, like we refine our foundations, and
I wish chiropractic stays the same, thank God. But like, no, I feel like we have modified and taken things to the next level every single year, and not in all ways. But like I said, so when I started, I did like group doctors reports back in the day. And like, that's how I signed up patients for care. And then I went to like a day 1, day 2 system. And well, at one point when I was like working in Texas, it was like a 3 or 4 day system that I did down there. And then last year, maybe a year and a half ago, I just created a 1 day system, because I'm like, we have digital x-ray here. We have scans here. Like, if we don't feel comfortable adjusting them the first day without, because we see something on there, then we won't. But like, we can finish a day 1, day 2 in 1 day, and like get, really have them make a decision right there too. And then get on their care plan, instead of like worrying about all the schedule stuff and all that. So I feel like then we moved to a 1 day system, and then it's like all the AI and the marketing has changed a ton. Even like our wellness has changed how we do it. Definitely all the softwares, so I feel like things change all the time. And that's why we have to have that time set aside for training too. And even like our training manual. So in Chiro Intensive, I do a lot of like, everyone has a role, and we go through each team member's role and we define all their roles and all of that. Well, now I've got it all digital, and our whole training manual digital, so that it's on Google Drive and attaches to Loom videos and attaches to trainings you can see in the office, and goes through our core values. And it's like, before that would have been paper, right?
Right.
So it's like just kind of continuing to modify as you go.
I was just in Boise 2 weeks ago with Ryan Ryder, from the UK, and he says it all the time, but like every level has a new devil, and he has the South African accent, and it just sounds really funny. But exactly what you're saying, where it's like each time you think you're like, oh, I'm at a cush spot, right? And it's like, oh crap, now I got to deal with this. Now I got to deal with AI. I didn't have that on my 2023 bingo card.
Yep, totally. It's interesting. And then I've just expanded amongst, like in chiropractic and other companies too, and real estate and all of that. So it's kind of like, okay, I've got the chiropractic thing down. Now let's take this to the next level. Or like right now, the docs who I'm looking to partner with on these next offices too, I'm like, okay, now this is partnership. Like, this is different too. Can't run all your tax strategies through a partnership like you do on your first practice, right? And so there's just lots of like differences and changes, and I love the strategy of being a business owner though too. Like, I love problem solving, so figure it out. But the thing is you have to think outside the box too, because when you get to a certain level, no one's doing what you're doing. And so it's like, who do you go to for that? I don't know. Or you see things you definitely don't want to do, which you guys have probably seen a lot of in your own practices too.
Do you have anything else, Zach? I got another follow-up question.
I got tons. So you go. Yeah.
Okay. So the thing is like with being the business owner, right? There's only so much business that you can be doing while you're also doing your 40 something hour adjusting hours a week, or like, 30-hour adjusting hours a week. So like, where do you, as the owner chiropractor, like where do you try to like get yourself, like what's like the role of that? Does that kind of make sense? Like, because like I like really have found that I like really love the entrepreneurial strategy, business strategy stuff, honestly, more than I love like the clinical aspect of things. And that was a realization I like just came to. Like, I like love the business thing because I can always think about it. But most of my day is spent doing just like normal care. So like
Right.
where, like, yeah, what's the seat that you're trying to sit in as like the owner doc?
Ooh, interesting. I think I don't know if I know your exact question you're asking with this, but I
How
kind
do I
of,
do more business stuff rather than
yeah,
like
I catch the
clinical stuff?
feeling behind it because that's how I am too. And I think first of all, like, I don't know if you're like this, but I had to like get unapologetic about it because like chiropractic is like my soul. Like being a chiropractor is my soul. It's like my purpose. But also I found like how much I love business and I love unlimited potential. I love wealth building and I love mentoring other chiropractors and helping other chiropractors as business owners continue to grow too. And I was like, I don't want to feel like a phony that I'm not in practice, like I'm not seeing patients anymore, right? I don't want to feel like out of touch and I don't really know what's going on because I'm like, I'm still like I'm literally in one of the practices right now, so I'm like, I'm still here. I still know what's going on, but I'm not laying my hands on patients and I don't need to feel guilty for that right now because I know I can make a greater impact in other ways. But I would say a couple of different strategic, like it's tangible things would be right now you're probably doing this, but looking at your schedule and time blocking and putting CEO time in. So I always like to have, like, if you have a Tuesday morning off, I like to just time block that like I would patient hours. And it's like, this is CEO time. You can even have like creative time too, probably on a different day where you're like, Friday afternoons, I'm off. I'm going to do 2 hours of creative work and go to the brewery or something like that, whatever like is in alignment for you, but like time block that and stick to it. And then you do CEO work and CEO time, you do creative work and creative time. You can start to like, I like to time block my whole week out too. And then you at least know that you get those hours on CEO time, but then you, in your CEO time, you need to start planning how to decrease those office hours, whether it's you decreasing them and just being more efficient and effective and productive in different hours, or starting to pass off some of those hours to the next doctor coming in too.
Nice. I know that's a huge, what you just said. I have like CEO time blocked off, and it's just a huge, I guess, weakness of mine where it's not a non-negotiable. And so something will come up and I'm like, oh, I'll just go do that. And
yeah, it's like
and
easy
then it's
to
like,
let that go.
then 6 weeks goes by and I'm like, oh, I haven't done CEO time. And I'm like, that's why we're behind on this and we haven't implemented that and this and that. It's like, okay, time to get back to that.
And you can start plugging it into your other hours. Like that's what's kind of hard, is like you can be in patient hours and then have some time between patients and all of a sudden you're responding to some stupid email and like your head's not in the right space. And you're like, why did I even do that? Or I didn't even finish that email then. Like there's just ways where you don't stay like in the zone too. But okay, if you have 30 to 40 patient hours a week, what are your hours?
You talking to us?
Yeah.
Oh, I have 28 patient hours.
Okay.
Yeah. So I still have a lot of time.
Okay.
Yeah.
I was like, who's seeing 40 hours with patients?
No.
Yeah, I
No.
think we do 20, yeah, like 28 or
Okay.
30.
Yeah.
Something
So
like
we say we have Tuesday mornings off. That's typically when we would be recording this podcast. And I'm still, I think for me, a lot of my time is still like, I'm in a town where I don't know anyone. So I'm at like networking meetings or this or that. And so I'm excited when I look towards the future, when I'm no longer just trying to shake everyone's hand. And I can actually sit down at maybe not a brewery Tuesday morning since we're seeing patients, but a coffee shop.
Morning, but
yeah.
your creative time at other days.
No, I know.
I like the grind of what you guys are in right now, though, like to be able to look back on that, I'm telling you, like it's funny when people meet me now and I'm like, I did all that in a shitty ass car that I wasn't even sure was going to get me there, in a stinky ass blue carpet apartment. Like I had no leg up in life at all. I only had debt to my name. And so like I went and did all the networking and the screening and like whatever it took,
Yeah.
to be able to like look back later on and be like, and especially, do you guys have kids yet?
No.
This is the time.
Yeah.
Like
That's what we both say all the time.
Yeah. That's
it
what
is.
both of our fiancés are also chiropractors. And I know one thing my fiance probably gets tired of hearing from me is like, now's the time for us to go. Cause like we don't have kids.
Yeah.
Like we
Yeah,
don't
that's
have
why I
those other
work.
responsibilities, but I still try. One thing I do try to be cognizant of is, for the most part, trying to create patterns and scheduling and systems that are sustainable. That way,
Yeah.
when kids do come into the picture, it doesn't throw like a huge train wreck into our office. And now all of a sudden it's like, oh crap, like Zach had a kid. We're going to have a crap practice for the next 2 years,
Right. Yeah. Yeah. I mean, I'm the one who birthed them too. So I feel like I
Right.
can give you guys some support on like, it's going to be okay. But it is coming up with that plan. Like if you want to paternity leave, I have, Tom Waller, who's a UK doc coming on the Millennial Chiro Summit, and he's just been on paternity leave too. And so I hope he talks a little bit about that, but, I feel like we should normalize that too. Like,
Yeah.
There's just so much more to normalize. Like if you want some freedoms like that, like there shouldn't be any, weirdness associated with that.
Can we go into a little bit? We don't have to go too deep into it, but just for the docs that are more in our situation, like if you can reflect back on those first 2-3 years in practice and what that was like, and how you started, and now how you started to see this bigger vision. Like what did your education, your learning, the grind look like for you versus nowadays?
Yeah. I like could get emotional thinking about it because it was like, I would say Lord, where to even start? When I look back at like when I opened, first of all, I was at that high volume office in Houston, and like it was like the job was done like that. It was parting ways, no money, banks laughing at me like, girl, you got student loans and you have nothing, no assets, right? So it was starting with nothing. And then literally just, I would go to like Goodwill and ARC, it's a thrift store here, and like buy their office supplies. I'm not kidding. They had like Office Max, like nice, like labels and stuff there. And like, just kind of built up the practice from like what I could do at the time. And then just talked chiropractic all the time and got out into the community. And, I would say like, the one thing I can say, I had someone ask me this not too long ago, is like, I knew I was going to be successful. Like, even if I was wearing literally thrift clothes, I was like from the thrift store, and just trying my best to like look professional. Like I got really good at finding like brand new clothes at the thrift store, but like I really couldn't, I didn't have money to go get anything. I feel like I still knew I was going to be successful no matter what. And I was profitable the first month in practice. And I think it's just because I was consistent with the systems that I knew and literally loved chiropractic. But I think gaining that confidence and that certainty in chiropractic and the principles of chiropractic too is important. Like if you feel wishy-washy, not you guys, but like anyone listening, like if you feel wishy-washy on the principle, or you feel like there's like that fire's not burning inside of you. Like the fact I can be like, geez, I could get emotional right now because like that got me through it. Right. That got me like, I didn't struggle with depression at that time. Not that that's not normal. I could totally understand people struggling with it, but it was like, if I didn't have patience, I would not allow myself to go on social media. Social media is part of marketing now. It wasn't as like cool back then, but like, I'd be like, here's the bigness of the fellow within. You're going to sit here and you're going to like read this because that's going to attract more patients in right now. And it would like, I'd go back to like Reggie and Sig, and I'd listen to like, I had CDs and tapes. I had to buy a tape player for the doctor's office on Amazon not too long ago, because I would just listen to it and they'd say things like, oh, I just stand at the adjusting table and like adjust fake patients, that eventually patients. I didn't go that crazy, but like, I definitely was like, keep your mind in a good place. Like it was always like redirect, call myself out for that, even though I had no one there watching me to call me out and be, you are engaging in low vibration activities right now, like hanging out on TikTok, whatever, that wasn't around, but you know what I mean?
Yeah.
So I had to like kind of have that check-in moment for myself constantly. Like I had to hold myself accountable all the time. But I would say like investing in the community was the biggest thing. I didn't even have coaching my first year in practice, maybe my first 18 months. And that was good because I didn't question myself. I think when I had coaches, I was like, oh, I didn't say that right, or I didn't do that full script, or I should have done it their way, or like, I can't believe I didn't have scans for a long time. I couldn't afford that insight. Even like, I don't even know if they would have leased it to me back then, but it was like, make do with what I have, what is a non-negotiable for me for how I want to care for patients. And then, the rest will come. And it literally fell in and has continued to fall in alignment. It's insane.
That's awesome. That's awesome. Because I think, at least for the people I not necessarily hang around, but in school, and you just hear some people where they're in their first year, but they want to be where you're at. And it's like, to me, I'm like, there's steps. Like, you can't just go from A to Z. And one thing I have to constantly remind myself of, a patient actually told me this, but she was like, you compare your chapter 1 to too many people's chapter 10, and you can't keep living life like that, or else you're just going to be stuck. It's never going to be enough. So that was awesome to hear you talk about that build up, because I think a lot of us can forget that a doc like you also had to go kind of work the town and grind and hustle. Yeah.
Oh my gosh. I did all the awkward networking, you guys. I screened in a freaking mattress store. Like I had to screen in a produce department at one point too. Like
That's
I feel
new.
like I have had to do, like I hate to say this, but like, I think when I was growing up in chiropractic, it was like really like toxic culture. And I know people could say that in other ways right now too, but like for sure it was like, I literally worked 80-hour weeks when I was an associate, and barely got Sundays off. We would be, because Houston traffic and stuff, I'd be at the office till 10:30 p.m. And it's just kind of crazy. But I do like the amount of docs who have been like, I went to Europe for a month, right? It's like, man, I want that. Like, I want that. And I'm like, you guys, I'm year 12 in practice. Like, this didn't just happen by mistake or by accident. Like, I have purposely planned my life and found the right people and support and poured into them to make this happen. It's not just like, cool, I'm lucky by chance and was able to do that, Yeah. So it's about not comparing your chapters, but it's also about not reliving your same chapter every year. Like, if you keep reliving that same, you're going to have that complacent practice, and life won't change. So, if you're fine with that, some people love their check in, check out. And I would say that could be partially, I don't know if this is okay to say. I would say partially to answer your question before, Spencer, of like comparison of, characteristics or qualities in an associate versus an owner. I would say 10% of associates, if they want to live that lifestyle of like, I check in, I check out, I get to go home and forget about everything from the day. I can have a drink, I can watch Netflix, rinse and repeat. I get the weekends to myself. Then like, they probably shouldn't be an owner if they're like loving that lifestyle, because that's not how it is. Right. But I think that's the repeating the same chapter every single year. And there's a lot of people in this world who are okay with that too.
Nice. That was really good. That was really powerful.
When you were talking about the whole, like, I just know, like I don't have anything to my name. I just kind of walk in here and it's like, and you're kind of like scrapping to get by. And then you're like, man, I don't have anybody coming in here, but I know I'm going to be successful. I feel like I like flash back to 7 months ago when I had 2 visits my first week, which I was like, man, I'm crushing it. And, like, I know I'm going to be successful, but yeah, like, I'm going to sit in this office because at some point I'm going to be here until 6 o'clock at night. And I was just talking to somebody about that this weekend, and like, all I would do is like watch education stuff or like read green books or do courses. Cause I'm like, I'm still working. Like I might not be seeing people, but I'm still here. And,
I think it's the integrity of sticking to that too. It definitely is. You're not trying to escape. Like, your work isn't, especially if you're feeling like the entrepreneurism pull even more too. It's like giving yourself that patience that you're heading, but it is like, I still feel it, like in like my stomach will like feel it of even right now. Like, I've got Millennial Chiro Summit going. I've got the partnership expansion happening right now. And then I've got Chiro Intensive in launch, and I'm like, oh my gosh, I'm so excited. Like, like that nervous growth of like big things are continuing to happen, that you feel it's like, it just keeps growing in different ways of like what's to come to. And I feel like that's what keeps you going, you know?
Yeah. I think like, well, Zach and I were just talking about that. And we've been talking about it recently, like something like in the past, like month or two for both of us has like really like shifted like in our brains, like of like, oh, like this can get as big as we want it to be.
Yeah.
And
Sure.
like, there's nothing like this is infinite, like as infinite as it can be. What are some things that like we really need to like lean into to like propel us forward, like toward that? Because that's the thing that like I don't want is to like relive the same chapter. And so like, where do we go like to really like take the next step?
Definitely make sure you are always writing projections and goals. And I know that can sound like boring, but like break them down into your micro goals and keep revisiting them. I would have each other as accountability partners. And like, just to be like, hey, I like to have like 3 different goals. So I like to have my personal goal, my professional goal, and then my financial goal. And each quarter have those goals, but then be reassessing them and have your micro goals week by week. And you should attach like celebrations to them. I'm not as good at that, but I feel like I celebrate life all the time. So whatever, like I'm always like, order the champagne. Like that's just who I am. So
that's just self validation, because Spencer and I talk all the time about how we're just so bad at celebrating when we reach our goals. I remember
because you're on with the next. You're like, okay, now what?
Yeah, literally, like you hit the thing and you're like, all right, well, that's good, but my vision is bigger than this $200 extra or something.
I have a story where we hit, I think it was like 100 in a week, and I was like, all right, that was my reward, is going to be a new pair of shoes. And I remember telling that story to my mom, and she was like, that's it, like just $100 pair of shoes. And I was like, I'm trying to celebrate these goals, and here I am not even celebrating right, but funny. No, that's funny. But I do like those goals, and something again I've learned from Ryan Ryder, and I'm sure you're the same way, where it's like the 7-figure high performing docs and owners are super obsessed with numbers, which it seems like you are. And we were sitting in a mastermind, and me and my buddy that were not 7-figure docs, he was like, what's the number right now with your PVA you would have to hit on patient visits per week? And I just sat there with like my mouth open. I was like, I have no idea. And he's like, well, you're never going to hit that if you don't even know like what you're reaching for. And it really made me go back and kind of reverse engineer it to really figure out. And now I have that number in my head. When I, if I ever bring an expo Marco home, I'll write it on my mirror. It's just a number that's constantly living in the back of my brain to obsess over.
That is my favorite thing, when you can make like the revenue turn into people, right? So you're not focusing on like 7 figures or whatever it is, and you can backtrack it into like people's lives who are changed because of this. But then you know that the abundance follows and prosperity follows, right? And I'll just say, because I'm at multiple 7 figures now, and I'm really not trying to brag, but I also think like no one says things these days.
It's kind of annoying.
You can just say it. Like nobody's going to judge you for your success.
I will say 7 figures, you guys, everyone can do. Everyone can do it. Everyone can have a 7-figure practice. Not like a cash practice. Like you can do it.
Yeah, I like that's the numbers that like I can't get out of my head, is like 1,000 a week, 5 million is like it's just like when I say it, it just sticks. And it's like that's the only vision I really have. So like
you say 1,000 patient visits a week. Is that what you're saying?
Yeah.
I mean, that should be a multiple 7-figure practice with OBA. So like that's the thing. It's like I'll see a lot of these offices that go through certain practice management programs are like 1,000 patients a week, and they're collecting like $750 a year, and their OVAs just suck, and so. Well, I shouldn't say they suck. Maybe they're fine with them, right? But it's like a Walmart value versus
commodity chiropractic.
Yeah. So it's like being able to backtrack that at what your office visit average is pretty cool, to be like, oh, it's actually not a crazy amount for whatever that dollar amount is,
Yeah. Going into like some more like dollar amount stuff, especially like as the business owner, since you have access to most of your capital and your revenue that you're raising, when do you start using that to invest like in your own future, like alternative streams of income? I know you're big in real estate. Zach and I both are really excited for real estate. I get almost just excited about investment properties as I do chiropractic.
Real estate is another, that's like but definitely like an antsy one, I feel like, because it's like, okay, is now a good time or should I wait? Or should I, like what part of real estate do you get into? To do syndication or but so for me, it was really important to pay off my student loans. I know there's a lot of people who are like, that's the last thing you do. There's all these strategies and stuff. But I told my financial advisor, I was like, look, this is a me thing. I will not feel successful until I pay these off. Mine are over 200,000. I know a lot of you guys have a lot more than that now, but to me, that was a huge priority. So I just made that happen. Right. But first I did buy a home before then too. And that wasn't easy. I had to be in business 3 years, show profitability for that. Now I think you could still do it faster than that. But back then,
2 years now. Yeah.
Okay.
2 years of W-2s.
I will say that's the bonus of being an associate is like my docs can buy their homes and have right away.
Things you just would never think about opening a business. And then you're like, you meet a mortgage lender and they're like, oh, have you been in business for 2 years? And you're like, no. You're like, well, you're stuck in an apartment. You're like, crap.
Yep. But I would say like getting into some sort of real estate. Okay. If I was to do this again, and I think this is actually kind of the order I did it. I can't remember what came first. I got into infinity banking with whole life policies and started right away because this is the youngest and healthiest you're going to be. Well, maybe not the healthiest, but the youngest you're going to be, and your health score should still come in really good at this age. So getting that going on you, your partner, kids when you have kids, and like business associates if you need to do that too. So I would say getting into that and then doing a whole life because whole life, I borrow money from myself. Have you guys gotten into like infinity banking, whole life? Heard a little bit about that.
I talked about it with a couple financial people and they're like, yeah, that kind of, it doesn't really work. And I'm like,
it's worked for me really well.
Yeah, so that's what I said. I'm like, I know a bunch of people who are super successful that it works well for them. So like maybe I need a different financial planner.
Well, no, I don't know. I actually think financial planners make more money when you do that too. So a lot of them will be like, no, don't do that. People are just selling you those to make money because they make good money selling whole life policies. But now that I've actually gone through, I've had mine long enough to be able to borrow from myself, be able to grow it to a significant amount too. I'm like, it's working for me, but I'm all about diversification, right? So I have gotten into angel investing. So I work with a venture capital firm. I'm one of the investors in that. And I've invested in 6 different companies this year. So that's a way to we usually do it like at seed funding levels, and then sell out when they're going IPO or going public. So that's kind of a nice way that I've been able to diversify in there. And I've done crypto and all those other, S&P 500 and that sort of stuff. But I would say the order I would go would be somewhere along the lines of get your whole life locked in, and then, and invest what you can into that. And then real estate, like your first piece of real estate, because when you have that, then you'll be able to have an asset to borrow against, to have on your net worth statement. It will continue to grow, but what type of real estate, your first time, would this be your guys' first property?
Yeah.
That'd be great. And then you could always do the BRRR method if you want to do any kind of flip type investment real estate, or if it's just your first home, that's okay. Get your first home and then have that asset and it's going to continue to grow. You can always borrow from it too, depending on what mortgage rates are at. So I kind of was able to borrow from one of my first home, increased multiple 6 figures in the time I lived in it. And so that helped pay off student loans too, when interest rates were low then. So and it just sucks economy at different times, right?
Yeah.
You're
my biggest regret was being in first grade when, 2009 happened. So that was a big bummer of mine.
But you would have
missed out.
Yeah. My student loans went up because I was between your university and Chiro school then. And so it was my university loans were nothing. And then my student loans were that 6.55% interest.
Yeah.
My student loans for Chiro school. I don't know if I said that right, but yeah.
So would you say, just out of sheer curiosity, I know everyone has their different philosophies, but in regards to real estate, are you looking more multifamily? Are you looking single family, or just really whatever you can get your hands on for that first property?
The first one, geez, that's a hard one because you guys will be able to put down less. in a deposit on that first one.
Mm-hmm.
So I would do whatever you can do at that. Like if you could find a duplex type
Yeah.
situation where you could be renting that out and they could pay your mortgage and all that, that's great. I have land, I have commercial properties, I have I don't have any short term, so I don't have Airbnbs going right now. We kind
Do
of have
you do you have any, like, just because I know at least in Dallas, short-term rentals are being almost outed because of
yeah,
a lot of
that's
that.
what's
So
kept
do
me.
you veer away from the Airbnbs? Yeah.
That's kept me, but I have some land that I'm thinking about putting like and it's not in city limits, but it's close enough, has
Mhm.
water and stuff. And I've thought about putting like a container home or
Yeah.
something out there that would be like kind of Colorado-esque, and I
Mhm.
know people rent tiny homes out here. So
Yeah.
I'm like, I've got to do something with this land right now. So I've considered that, but yeah, it is a little questionable on some of like the areas in our city for
Cool.
Airbnb. Yeah.
Cool. Now, I mean, a big question I have is so you have your angel investing, you have impact chiropractic that you're open 8 to 10 practices in 18 months. You have
Yeah.
Chiro intensive, you have the millennial Chiro summit, you have kids, you have a husband, and you
Yep.
have all these rental properties.
Yeah.
How, like, do you just have a better brain than everybody? Like, how are you keeping this all together and being healthy, and like what goes into your weekly planning or stuff like that?
Yeah, good question. So a lot of this just kind of runs itself now. So like the practices really do, like Dr. Laura and I partnered on Loveland and we meet on Zoom actually, even though we're like not neighbors close. We're like, we hang out as friends, but we're not talking about the practice. So we meet on Zoom twice a month for an hour, maybe a little less. And so that's about and I'm always there for her, of course, anything she needs, but like that's on us practicing together for so many years. Like we are literally the same human in a lot of ways when it comes to chiropractic. So she doesn't really need me over there. So that practice runs itself. The Impact Fort Collins is just so systematized and I have a leadership team in place. So that, runs itself in some ways, but there's more people. So it's a little bit more of like the, managing people side of things in some ways. Like I want to make sure I'm coming in and staying, relevant, I guess, staying like,
You don't want to be super distant.
yeah, yep. And then I just use this. So I own this property is 9,800 square feet. So I have like impact on some of it and 6,800 square feet. And then I've got tenants in the other two suites. And so I just have space where I can come in here and work too. And then, yeah, I'm definitely, I would say with my kids, I'm like how do I say this? I have seasons and I plan out my seasons. So that's what I plan out more than my days. So that's why Chiro Intensive is like fourth quarter. So like my kids, my husband, they know she's working it in fourth quarter. Like I am like here doing work stuff, connecting with other chiropractors. And then it's like come December and I've like rented out the Gaylord for us. So we've got Christmas activities, Santa train. Like I pre-plan all the fun. That's why I had a month in Europe before it was like, we're launching all these things. Taking on like the expansion for Impact Chiropractic with the 8 to 10 practices. I'm starting all those docs in a cohort in January together. So not only do they have like me as their business partner and helping them guide. I mean, you guys know what it's like starting a business, that like helping them through the whole process of like negotiating leases and tenant improvements and all the processes of starting a business from the beginning. They have me, but then they have each other too. And so they're going to like all open regionally, like probably staggered a little bit. That's why I say up to 18 months. But it's going to be cool to like have that season. And then I'm not back on Chiro Intensive until fourth quarter. And now I have 3 coaches this year on Chiro Intensive too. So when I used to like manage every single cohort call, now I've got other docs who are like phenomenal doing all of that too. So I feel like I know I attract really good people in my life. I am a good person. Like I am a very sincere person of integrity. Honesty is super important to me. So like I get those, you just know those people who vibe with you, right? And you're like,
Yeah.
I can trust you, you can trust me. And you just kind of go to work, I guess. And then so with my kids, it's like, I plan so much with those kids. We were in Bali for 2 weeks in March too. So like when I'm on, I'm very much on. And like my husband always says that he's like, you might have seasons where you're like you don't have as many hours, but I make sure I'm doing like drop-offs. I make sure I'm at jujitsu 2 times a week. Like there's certain non-negotiables for me that are like, this is what I do. And then I fit everything else around it. because I'm even like with my kids, like I will make playlists for them and I will have affirmations ready for them. Like I will have these things when I think about them and I'm not with them. So then when I'm with them, it's like, let's listen to the playlist, or let me show you this like meme I found that reminded me of you. Or, you know, like there's just different ways to be intentional when you're not with the people you love too. But I mean, you guys are business owners, and like we were just chatting, like there's this entrepreneur bug that it's like, if I just ignored it, I would not be a cool person to be around. Like everyone around me knows like this is how I'm a high performing, functioning human being. And it's just like what's best for everyone.
Society for the most part
That's
does
for
not
everyone.
understand you. And
yeah, and I delegate out everything, you guys, too. Like Atomic Habits, like that's a great book if you haven't read that. I delegate so much. I have someone who I've hired to do my laundry. Like we don't have to do any of our own laundry. Like it's just, yeah, getting to the place where, oh, buy back your time, to Dan Martell's book. That's kind of like that whole delegation point too. Like I just really have put that all into place. Now, if I could get AI to integrate more and more of my life, that'd be cool, but that's not there yet. Most of it's dependent on human beings.
Yeah. You still have to type it into Chat GPT. It just doesn't put it out for you. Yeah.
I've been looking at all like the Zapier. Have you guys heard of?
Yeah.
Like I'm trying to get some of those integrations. I'm sure you guys do that with podcasting too. Yeah.
I just upload it and I just upload the Zoom file and it just goes straight up and that's it.
Sweet. That is nice.
It's pretty good. To kind of wrap everything up and to kind of bring everything to a close, I kind of want to talk about Chiro Intensive just a little bit more.
Yeah.
Can you tell the listeners, one, how they can apply for Chiro Intensive, and then two, what are the things that you're looking for someone? How do you get accepted to Chiro Intensive and those things?
Yeah. Good question. So I would say Chiro Intensive is, you can apply on chirointensive.com. However, right now you have to put in HTTPS / for it to work. So just a heads up, if it looks like a broken link, put that in there. And then to apply, there's an application on there, and then we do a discovery call with our coaches. But I would say the best time to apply is if you're looking to grow and scale, and then if you're looking to bring an associate on in the next year, or if you already have associate doctors, or if you're looking to partner in on other practices too, because we go through like operating agreements, buy sells, all of that. I would say that's like you get a lot of like legal documents I've paid attorneys to work on, which I will always recommend have your own attorney look at, but there's a lot of that stuff in there too. But I would say it's not for anyone looking to exit. Even though we do have some exit strategy interviews as some of the bonus material, it's not for exit strategy docs. I'd say it's really the millennial age docs that are mostly in it. And then those who are out of startup mode, making money, but also like, I can't do this forever like this. I need to figure out the next step. Like, you know, that feeling of when you get there and you're like, I'm making good money, but I can't keep doing this. So those are kind of the docs I would say. If you have those feelings, you're in the hustle scale mode for sure, getting in there. But then if you're kind of planning out that associate, when to start growing team docs, that's a great time.
Cool.
Nice.
That's super awesome. Definitely looking forward to it. I don't know if I want to speak for Spencer. Yeah. You want to talk about Millennial Chiro Summit?
I don't know if it'll already be done by then. It's August 21st through the 25th, but that's free.
This will be uploaded next Tuesday.
Yep.
Sweet. Okay.
Yeah.
Millennial Chiro Summit. It's free. It is 5 days, starts at 1 p.m. Eastern every day. But each day is kind of themed, but I have 40 millennial aged chiropractors who are coming in. The first day is really on like reigniting your passion, for chiropractic. It's kind of just, if you're in that place where maybe like the business has gotten to you, or just like, you're just in a place where you like need some get dipped again. Day 1 is great for you. Day 2 is kind of cool. I feel like I'm bringing in chiropractors that not everyone's heard of. I've got like the TLC chiropractor, Alessandra is coming on. But day 2 is really on innovative branding. I should like list it so I don't sound ridiculous. Let me look at my paper. Positioning yourself as a distinguished chiropractor through innovative branding. So I've got like some doctors right now. It's kind of funny. I've had agents having to look at my contract. So I can't say everyone who's on, but Alessandra, TLC approved, she's coming on. But I've got like some who are like big on TikTok doctors coming on, just concierge type chiropractic for that. And then Wednesday is becoming the best in your specialty. And we've got docs who are, you guys would probably know most of them, but like big in one area. Thursday's leadership, CEO mastery. And then Friday is scaling for impact. And these are docs who are scaling in all different ways. So I've got anywhere from oh gosh, what is this called? Well, Sadie's coming in and she's talking about going from associate to opening up your own practice and when to know to take that leap. But then we've got Austin Cohn, who owns multiple practices. I don't even know how many he has all over. He even has one in Colorado. So that's like a cool scaling. I'm excited to have him in on an interview for that. And then docs like Nona DeVita is coming in and she does part-time $1 million practice. And so just different levels. Everyone teaches a TED Talk. So they should be teaching in their talk. It's pre-recorded, so then I can make sure that there's teaching happening too. And yeah, it's kind of going to be like that top level content in there, which I'm super excited for.
Awesome. And we could definitely, I mean, I'll definitely be on there. So I'm excited to
and
hop
where
on.
Where do people go to get on the Millennial Chiro Summit?
That is chiropracticsummits.com. That page opens tonight. So
okay.
It'll be open by the time we post this.
We can probably throw it in the show links and stuff
cool.
like that. Yeah.
Yeah. Yeah.
I say that. I don't do that. Spencer, can we throw it in the show links?
It's pretty easy.
Cool.
I can DM it to you guys. Yeah.
Yes,
yeah.
that'd be great.
It's free to attend and like attend when you can. It'll be cool. I'm pumped. And some of the docs are giving away like freebies, like for different PDFs or courses or that sort of stuff. So you'll get like even more like free resources within the summit as well.
Awesome.
Yeah. Man, this has been so good.
Yeah. Super beneficial. Super beneficial. If you're, I mean, I'm sure like a Chiro student has probably maybe tuned it out just because it was a little more high level, like you got to be in it. But this has been, I mean, I don't have a notepad next to me, but I've just been writing on sticky notes. Yeah. And so this has been great for us, and definitely appreciate you spending your Monday night chatting it up with us and giving us a ton to think about, and really look forward to talking more chiropractic, business scaling, all those things with you. Is there anything else you'd like to leave our listeners with before we?
I don't think so. I mean, you guys reach out if you start to like, especially like we talked about, like sometimes you feel like you're on an island in different ways, like tax strategy, right? If you could start to like run into any walls with anything, feel free to like DM me and let me know. And I'll kind of, again, I won't say like do exactly what I do, because doing something wrong, please tell me if you find out something I'm doing isn't okay. But I usually try to have, I try to do everything right, ethical, with an integrity. So I'm happy to share what I do too. I'm always an open book like that. So let me know.
Awesome. Thank you so much, Elise.
Yeah.
Thank you so much, Dr. Elise. And thank you so much for all of you that have been listening. If you like this, please share it to your story and share it with somebody you feel like needs to hear this. And leave us a rating or review on the show so we can continue to bring awesome guests like Dr. Elise to your ears. And thank you so much for listening to another episode of the What Now podcast. Peace.